Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it, you already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up, bye up. Let's get to the intro. This is a good one. Welcome back to the channel, and if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directing the direction of the dope content that the gun stays kicking. And I appreciate your support, man. Thank you. I'm very humbled. So I got asked a question, man, and I wanted to give an elaborate answer, the correct, the truthful, the honest answer, because I ain't got shit to hide, man. That's not what I do, right? They asked me, what was it like being in Susanville prison, and what happened that you were able to function at Susanville prison? Because they heard in 2006, 2007, Susanville was a bad prison. It was a 50-50 yard for Norteños. So what, you just went 50-50 right from the gate? The answer is easy. No. Let me explain to you what happened prior to Norteños, active Norteños being released to that yard. So in order to tell you the correct and the righteous and real story, I have to take it back to DVI Tracy reception. So I'm sitting there in reception, right? I've already been convicted from county jail. I'm doing 4 years for an assault with a deadly weapon with a GBI, right? Of course, I took the case. I had a crimey. He had nothing to do with it. He just happened to be in the same vicinity as me. And when I went to court, which was pretty fast, I said, no can do, no siree, no, he's not part of this. I'm going to go ahead and ride this one out to the Honeycomb Hideout myself. I did this. And what it was I was at a bar. There was a dropout gang member at that bar who was wanted in the highest degree. He was out there boasting, bragging, laying people down, robbing people, doing his thing as a degenerate. He was doing a lot of degenerate activities. And his anger and his anguish was directed at active Norteños. We all knew that he was at that club that night. So when I pulled up and I identified him, I got off where I was mad at. True stories. I was active at the time. I did what I was supposed to do. And a lot of things ensued, man. I ended up getting jumped because he was with a lot of non-active gang members. I got cut in the back. I got a slice on the back of my head. It is what it is. I ended up getting told on. I went on the run. I was in Oxnard, California. I was in Ventura, California. I was all over the place. In Sur Gang, I was down south, right, chilling. I ended up coming back, going to my chick's house at the time. She was a chick from Sanjo. They raided my pad. They snatched me up. Some people told on me. It is what it is, right? So now I'm locked up. I'm through the county jail system. They offered me 4 years. I'm run that. I'm taking that. Let's go to prison, right? So now I'm in Tracy prison. And when I get there as an active Norteño, I'm just functioning, doing my thing. Got me a little position in the COC. That means the chain of command. I thought I was somebody, okay? Now I had been affiliating with the regiment when I was on the streets. I was part of that. But that didn't matter once I got locked up. Now I'm just in the fold with the homeboys, and it is what it is. And I'm getting a lot of love from people from my area. Tracy being our reception, there's a lot of people from Merced there, Modesto, the whole Central Valley. So I know a lot of people I've been locked up with in YA. People, I just know everybody. It's all love, right? So the one thing I didn't like was the way it was flipping. There was people going back and forth. And this was 2006, November 2006, I believe. And when I pulled up, right, we were just getting off lockdown because we were going at it with the Woods. In fact, we were going at it with the Wolf Pack. The Northerners and the Wolf Pack had been on a lockdown for over a year because one of the Woods got killed in Tracy prison, right? Northerners killed him. So, of course, this was going to be our first yard. This was going to be our first being able to go to the chow hall. Like, they're transitioning, doing all that. So I get there. It's all good, man. If you guys know Flacco from a convict's perspective, he was in Tracy, just left Tracy right before I pulled up. He was still active at the time before he flipped and did whatever he did, right? So he's told stories about that beef with the Wolf Pack. In fact, he was very instrumental in that because at that time he did have the llaves. That's just the truth, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to lie on anyone or not give you the facts. So I get there. I'm settled with the homeboy Puppet from Sacra. And he's a bro. He's my boy. Man, a lot of love for that dude at the time, right? Little did I know he was going to be part of my demise. And little did I know he was going to be part of the reason that I get put basically what they say in the hat. Whatever, right? So I'm doing 4 years. They tell me to roll up. Usually they'll tell you where you're going. Sometimes they won't. You just pull up where you pull up to. So in this particular time, they come, they say, roll it up. It's time to go, right? So I'm wondering, where the fuck am I going to go? So I asked the cop. He doesn't know. He's like, all I know is you got to roll it up, man. Time to take you to R&R, put you in the paper suit so you can jump on the Grey Goose and get somewhere. So, of course, I do put the paper suit on. There's other homies, other Northerners. There's probably about 6 or 7 of us leaving Tracy that are in that cage. So I start asking the homeboys, hey, where are we going, bro? Where are we going? They're like, hey, we're going to Susanville, Lassen Yard, 3 yard. I'm like, all right, that's probably where I'm going to go because I got level 3 points, whatever, right? So I'm like, cool, at least I know where I'm going. And then I remember the homeboy saying Lassen was all bad. It was a 50-50 yard. So already in my mind, I'm not telling none of the homeboys this because I don't know what their decision is. See, one thing I learned, don't say too much. Don't ever let no one know what you're thinking. So I'm not going to tell these other active Norteños because they might get off the bus and ring that bell. They might get off the bus and go left when they should go right. They might not be wanting to get off where they're mad at. They might be wanting to stay there. So I'm already targeting people like, all right, here's one homie, man. He looks like he might be flim flam. I'm already judging books by their cover, right? I shouldn't be, but I am. Because at the end of the day, I got to look out for myself and what I believed in. And what I believed in at that time was the Norteño cause. I didn't care about nothing, dropout stuff, active, like none of that. I didn't care none of that. Didn't care about none of that. All I cared about was the homies. You know what I'm saying? And what they thought about me. So with that being said, I'm already targeting fools. Like, what are they going to do? If I see a motherfucker start turning left, I'm going to take flight. Fuck that. I ain't even going to hit that yard. I'm going to go to the oil and get my get backs. So we get to Susanville. We're all in R&R, right? We get there. It's pretty late because anyone that knows Susanville is directly across from High Desert. It's a long ride from Tracy. It's probably like a 6 to 8 hour ride, maybe even longer. I forget, man. I slept half the time there. I was knocked out. So when we do pull up, I'm tripping out, looking around. It's a new prison. I've never been here. And I heard they call it the White House, and they were not lying. It was the White House. So we get to R&R. They have a gang lieutenant comes. He's pulling us out one by one, questioning us. Are you an active member? Are you a gang member? What are you claiming? Of course, you give him the rundown you're supposed to give him. Put me wherever you're going to put me. So he tells me, he said, look, this yard right now is transitioning from a non-active Norteño yard, a 50-50 yard. We're flipping it. It's going to become an active Norteño yard. With that being said, you guys are going to be housed in Ad Seg as an overflow. And I'm saying, why don't we just go to the yard? He said, because we're still trying to weed out who's left on this yard. So anyways, bam. All right, cool. I get to the oil directly. They put our property in front of our doors. I get sold up with the little homie from Modesto, little shorty from Modesto, who ends up, excuse me, little homeboy Chino from Modesto. Shorty's my neighbor later on. I'll explain that. So I'm right there, right? I'm chilling, and there's a gang of homies. There's about 80 of us in the oil. So we start communicating, getting our fishing lines. Wheelers are flying. Everybody's finding out who's who, what's what. Everyone came. There was already Norteños there prior to our busload pulling up. So we're doing our, you know what I'm saying, our screening, like, so we can get cleared and all that. So everything's happening fast tracking. So none of us know when we're going to be released out of the oil. We could be there for a year. We could be, whenever they're ready to let us go, they let us go. About a week later, it's evening time. Gang of cops walk in, so you know something's happening. Either someone got off on the yard, they're going to bring somebody in. Something's going to happen. They start fucking calling out names to the tower. They're popping our doors. I'm seeing all kinds of homeboys. They're popping their doors. Boom, boom. They're telling them to step outside their cell, grab their property. Your property was right in front of your door, right? So bam, some people got big old giant bags of property because they came from other prisons. So they got stacks of paperwork, property. I myself didn't have much. I had a few different canteen items because one of the homeboys that was my cellie before I left, he was from Windsor, right? He had just hit canteen, so he gave me a gang of sopas and stuff that I needed because I was leaving. He was like, "Here, bro, take all this shit. You're going." He was just doing a violation. I was going to prison, right? Like to do some time. So he plugged me in. So I got a little bolsita, whatever. So me and my cellie comes out. His bag's hefty. He had come from San Quentin. He was doing time in Quidma, so he had a big fat bag. So anyways, he's like, don't trip, bro. We're going to try to get cells done. You know, when you got a cellie in prison, you become cool. You chop it up and whatever. We've been in the cell for a week. We hit it off. He's the homie. So he's like, I got you, bro. Let's try to stay celled up, hopefully. Well, they start reading our names off, and they're like, you're going to this block. You're going to that block. And he gets separated from me. He's going to a different block, right? So they sent about 10 of us to one block, to I think it was 2 or 3. I forget. I think the oil's 3. It was 2 block. So whatever, man. I remember Scarface from Sacra, Money from Stockton, just a few homeboys, right? They send us. Boom, there was a homeboy from Frisco. I remember he ended up rolling it up because I don't know. He faked a heart attack. I ran into him later, but so we're going, bam. So we go to the buildings. So now we start to get the rundown of what happened. This is what happened. This is why it flipped. There were several melees and a riot that happened prior to us getting there. Who gave us the rundown what happened? A Southsider. That's the truth. My neighbor was this dude named Bird from Townsend and another dude named Bird from Sangra, Big Bird. They were my neighbors. They shot a Wheela over. Hey, you guys are active Norteños? Yeah, what's up, right? Hey, trip out, bro. This is what happened with your peoples here, which who wasn't really considered our peoples because they were non-active. What had happened is this. Prior to us getting there to Susanville, that was a 50-50 yard. In 2006, there were non-active Norteños, about 30 or 40 of them on that yard, right? In fact, one of your favorite content creators was there, okay, as a non-active Norteño. And what had happened was that is called, Susanville was called the White House because it was. All the staff, all the cops, all the COs, they were all pretty much old country white dudes that didn't fucking like black or brown. Then you had a whole bunch of skinheads. I never seen more skinheads on one yard in my life than in Susanville on Lassen Yard and Woods. There were probably about 150 of them, which is rare on that yard. They had all the good jobs. They were plugged into the yard crew, plugged into the, what do you call it? The office. Like they had all the fucking bomb jobs. They were all the cooks. Usually you go, the cooks is diverse. They're all lifers. You see some black dudes, Mexican dudes, white dudes. Nah, they were all white. Like they were plugged in with everything. So the program office, visiting, the skinheads had it sold, and they were skinheaded out the game. When you go out to the yard, they had the big old boots all tied up, suspenders and shit, no t-shirts on. Oof, oi, 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 oof, oof. Right? They were doing their motherfucking oi, oi on. And so the Southsiders are like, hey, look, there's a gang of fucking Woods here, a gang of skins. They're the majority on this yard, but this yard is raza controlled, meaning that the Southerners, look, true story. One Southerner could hit a yard and they control it. That's how they feel. That's their thing right now. There's 80 of us being released, and we know they were fishing for information. They were like, hey, how many of you guys got out the oil? We're not going to tell them nothing. This is the opposition. At the end of the day, there's respect. This was before the end of hostilities, before any of that. We're not going to give them, oh, yeah, this is the homeboy from Stockton, the homeboy from Modesto, the homeboy from... No, we're not going to say none of that. Just like, nah, bro, we just, you know what I'm saying? We got out the oil. We're here. So they're like, hey, don't trip. There ain't no drama. You guys do your thing. Okay. So what had happened was this. The non-active Northerners started to gain numbers there prior to us getting there. There was about 40 of them. And they got a plug with tobacco. Okay. Prior to them getting that plug, the Woods had all the plugs. They had everything going on. Southerners had their thing going on, whatever they had. But the Woods and the skins were running that yard, controlling the majority of what was coming in and out of that yard, which is very rare, right? And they started to do business with the Northerners because the Northerners got plugged in on some tobacco. They were getting cans and cans. And so the Woods wanted it sold up. So they were trying to buy everything the Northerners got and then resell it the way they were doing it, right? Now, because these were non-active Norteños, they were able to fraternize and do business with other group segments. Now, should this group segment have been doing business with non-active Northerners, being that they were still active and in the business? Of course not. But prison is different, man. The yards flow because of money. Money sees no color, sees no active, non-active. They don't care about none of that. And you got to understand that these were not, people got the misconception of 50-50 yards. They think it's all chomos and weirdos. It's not like that. These Northerners were either fell off, were pushed out, pushed back, but none of them were debriefed. None of them were rats. None of them, I'm sure some of them probably in the cuts did their thing or whatever, but the majority of them, they didn't have bad charges, none of that, because if they did, they would not be able to walk that yard with the Southsiders and the whites who were active and even the blacks. Like, they're not going to allow no fucking chomos to be just on the yard. The Southerners would have got off and the whites for sure, 100%, right? So these dudes were on the yard for a couple of years with these whites willing and dealing. Well, what had happened was a skinhead got there who did not want to do business with any non-actives, period. He was pushing that line. He had just got out the bay. He was a shoe kick out. He went to a different yard, got his points dropped, and then ended up coming to that yard and kind of like took over. He was well seasoned, and he was like, nah, if these dudes are not active, they're going to tell. They're going to, like, they don't have that loyalty. And in prison, everything is based on respect and loyalty. And if they feel like, hey, if you're not good in your own people's eyes, then you don't give a fuck about your people, then you really don't give a fuck about us, right? So he started pushing a hard line. And what happened was there were 6 cans that came in, right? The Northerners got 6, the non-active Northerners, which are considered still Northerners. They got 6 cans. These dudes copped the 6 cans from them and decided they weren't going to pay them. And so what happened, they decided they weren't going to pay him, and the Northerners were like, hit him up, like, hey, what's up with the bread? Dudes are like, you're burnt. You ain't got nothing coming. So the Northerners got off in the chow hall, right? There was like 3 or 4 of them that got off with the Woods. They got the upper hand. But remember, the Woods and Skins are deep. So there was no way for the non-active Northerners to outlast them. So where it really kicked off was, and this is a story that was told to me, and it's facts, right? The whites all came out, and they stood right there by the basketball court area, right? And when the Northerners were walking around, they were walking in 3s or 4s. You can only be in a certain group. You couldn't be like one big, large group. They'll lay the yard down. You know what I mean? They'll see that something's going down. And they would send out fucking skins, just boom. On every time 3 Northerners walk by, boom, 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 skinheads got off. They laid the yard down. It was like an isolated incident. They let them up. They did it twice before they shut the whole yard down, which they should have just shut the yard down from the beginning. When it's 2 different races, usually that's what was odd to me. Usually they lay it down, especially with that many whites on that particular yard, right? But because it was the White House, they let them get away with a little bit more than they should have. So what had happened prior to us is they decided to flip the yard. Every time they came off a lockdown, either the Northerners, the ex-Northerners got off on the Woods, or the Woods got off on them, to eventually every time they would take the Northerners off the yard and put them in the oil, and they would bring just more whites. And then the administration decided, you know, it was too much. Every Northerner that got there, the Woods were just taking flight. They were taking flight. They were taking flight. They were handling their business. They were smashing out the Northerners. There was only probably about 3 or 4 of them left on the yard when the administration decided, you know what? It's time for us to snatch these dudes up off the yard, place them in ad seg, and get them out of here. That's when we got to the yard, right? That's when they decided we're going to flip it and make it an active Northerner yard. When the first busload pulled up, there was a dude named Evil from Castroville who allegedly was part of the organization, but he was on walk alone, right? He had got there on that first busload, or he might have even been there prior. But as we started to roll up, I remember seeing him. He would always go to yard in the evening time outside by himself. We'd go out there functioning on one side of the yard. He'd be out there. The homies would be chopping it up with them. We'd be chopping it up. And he said that he had some court shit going on. They had him on walk alone because he was dangerous and because he was validated and all these different things. And everyone sucked it up with the super straw. Soca shit. We just believed it. You know what I'm saying? When a homeboy who's a big homie and is in position to tell us what it is, and he's telling us what it is, we just have to take it for what it is. So eventually we hit that yard, but he, I guess, had worked it out with the whites and let them know, hey, this is going to become an active Northerner yard. So, you know, whatever them dudes had going on has nothing to do with us. So we were never approached by the whites. Never. There was never no issue. Like, they didn't even trip because they had already removed all the guys. And see, that's what happens in the California prison system. Like, say you have a melee or a riot between North and South. And they had several riots at Susanville prior to us getting there. Not necessarily big time riots, but there was a lot. I mean, the whites were just doing their thing, man. There was too many of them, right? Southerners were saying, man, they were getting off. They were getting off. So anyways, I'm right there. Get to that yard. We got these bleachers. Everything's good. I got a homeboy that's from Merced that's there. And it's all love, man. That's when I realized and I started to see what had happened was them same white dudes that were doing, because they conducted all the business, they hooked up with the rep, the Northerner that basically had that yard. He had the keys to that yard because old boy that was in the back, who come to find out later on was a degenerate, was a dropout, was controlling the whole yard and establishing, and wasn't even in the mix. It's all bad, right? That's why when people question my story and they're like, why didn't you get your due process? Why didn't you write to the back? To who? To him? Shit, he's the one that tried to have me whacked. Stop it, right? And then shot me coffee later on. Stop it. Look, anyways, so that's what had happened to Susanville. The whites controlled it, and they got rid of all the non-active Northerners. Now, I'm right there. I'm on the yard, and you guys know the story. If you don't, man, you got to go to some of my older videos where I tell you, you know, I noticed that there's some drug use going on. I try to report to the back on it. Like, hey, that's not snitchy, man. That's what you do. Like, hey, what's going on right here, man? This ain't the way we get down. And of course, they took the course of action they wanted. I realized and recognized it. And so I just got off where I was mad at. You know, I had to get off because I was already in bad. I was going to be in bad standings anyways. They wanted to get rid of me. So I kind of got railroaded and done dirty, but it's probably the best thing that ever happened, because at the end of the day, I'm in the position I'm in now of just living my life and raising my children. And it was going to happen one way or the other, because slowly but surely I was realizing that I was not cut from that cloth. You know, throughout the YA system, throughout my first years in prisons, Tracy, all that. Yeah, when I had a lot of homeboys around, it was all canalismo, it was all love. But when I realized that them same homeboys that I was willing to shed blood for and I had love for didn't treat me in the same manner, then it was what it was. And remember, this is an isolated incident. This doesn't mean that everyone's career is like this or everybody's time is like this. That's why you don't judge the next man on what he does, if he locks it up, if he's a 50-50. Like, you don't judge that. That's like the whole King Nico thing. Look, I understand people wanted him to be hardcore and function and all that, but he decided he wanted to get home to his children. That's his business, what he wanted to do. He put his business out there, so of course it's going to be scrutinized. I couldn't care one way or the other, man, even if I was active, because, hey, that's bed space. One person's going to leave that bed, and believe me, there's two more that are going to try to fill that motherfucker up. It's just how it is. But for those that ask me the questions, was it a bad yard? It was. It was a bad yard prior to them flipping it in 2007, late 2006, 2007, us getting there. Remember, I got there in November 2006, right? So it flipped by 2007, and we were on that yard, and that's pretty much what was happening in Tracy. Now, there was two other riots that did happen. I've told the stories on it. One happened between the Southerners and the blacks over a picture. That happened in the gym, right? The Southerners waited late night, got suited and booted, got hot water in the hot pots, threw them on the brothers, man, and got off where they were mad at. Caught the brothers slipping, man. That was a crazy one. I remember I was in the oil when that happened, and that dude Shorty from Modesto was my next door neighbor, and that's how that worked out. I seen hella people coming in all bandaged up, burned up. And then right prior to me leaving, being shipped out to Jamestown, right? There was an incident between North and Blacks, Kumis, right? And usually, man, North and Black kind of function on the same yard. They're on the same page, but it was a deal gone wrong over a radio, right? It was over one of those nice radios, and the Northerner felt played. The brother felt played over his money, and there was fools got off right there, man. It was going down. Right before I left, I remember they were bringing people to the oil. They kicked off a big riot. The Northerners got off on the Blacks and sliced one up, and the brothers retaliated. So it was going down. Anyways, that answers the question. That's what happened at Susanville, man. The non-active Northerners all took off the yard by the whites. The whites wasn't playing. They fucked them off. With that being said, thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I truly believe in. That's the betterment of all people. I hate doing prison stories, but I answer questions, man, if I can. Bang, bang.